Hi, welcome back to Thrive America. I'm your host, Brent Brooks, and joined by very special guest, J. Mark Walker. Mark is the Vice President of Client Development of Integrity Solutions, LLC, and an expert when it comes to training your sales staff to go into the field and build your business. And I've seen firsthand Mark do this to companies and turn them around and get the sales staff excited, invigorated, and incentivized to go and produce for their company. And we've already talked about some great principles. We've talked about how you can, as an owner of your company, if you were to hear your sales staff talk about at the water cooler, talk about your business, you would want them to talk about, hey, to be excited about building the business and so forth, versus being nervous about losing their job. And then how we need to build our business by building our people, and so forth. So now we're going to move into training is not an event, it is a process. Mark, what do you mean by this principle here?
Well, anyone who's been to a traditional sales training program has probably come away feeling very good, because the content is almost always of value. Unfortunately, it's an event. In fact, sometimes it's more of a motivational speech than it is a learning process. So if somebody goes to a 1 or 3 day training class like that, they come away, they have great intentions for applying what they learned, but somehow it never quite translates down into their daily activities. I know because I've experienced that myself. One of the factors was that nobody else seemed to be using the language that was taught. Another factor was my boss never once asked me anything at all about that. And so it didn't become a part of our culture. So training, rather than being events, ought to be a process. Now, there'll be events involved in that process, but that process needs to involve accountability, repetition, reinforcement, and some positive reinforcement. In other words, catching people doing something right. And this learning process is ongoing. It never stops. So often the attitude, particularly about soft skills training, that is how to deal with people, is that, well, we went to that class last year, so do it. And having good intentions doesn't make it happen. It's learning how to make it a matter of habit. The purpose of our kind of training especially is to change people's behavior. We want people to do things differently, and we would like it if we could all use the same, for example, the same selling process. So when I say to you, well, we're still in the interview phase, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then if I say to you, this particular prospect is a talker, you know what I'm talking about. You know that this individual is very friendly, they're outgoing, they're easy to meet. They may unintentionally mislead us into thinking that there's a bigger opportunity here than there really is, because they like people. They like us to think well of them. And they may make a decision to go ahead and then change their mind later because they went back and talked to somebody who asked them a question they hadn't thought to get an answer to. So when we have this shorthand, see, it took me a minute and a half probably to explain that, what that was. But if you and I both had that same training, and you're my boss, and I said, well, Brent, I think this guy's a talker, we're still in the interview, you and I might come up with a strategy as to how to work best with this individual to help him or her tell us what we need to know to determine whether we can help them get where they want to go. Does that make any sense?
It does. It sounds to me, and the more I get to know you, the more I understand that you teach people to understand the client and get them to maybe ask for the sale, but it's never any selling. It's always communication. It's always figuring out what the needs are. And I'd like to have you come back at some other point and talk about maybe some of the different behaviors that you can teach us to gauge the conversation and negotiate the conversation, so we better are in tune with the kind of quirks of behaviors of these people and be able to pick up the different styles. Next, you talk about here managers and supervisors are often unaware of their role in helping people change. What do you mean by this?
Well, several years ago, I was conducting an integrity coaching program for a group of sales managers from a major company, and one of the guys came up at a break and he says, You know, what you're sharing with us makes so much sense because we tend to bring all of our people in, beat them up, and then send them back out expecting them somehow to do better. Now, that doesn't mean that you ignore when people misbehave or act inappropriately or fail to follow prescribed procedures. But it does mean that you look for what people are doing right and you encourage them along those lines. It also means that you engage an individual on a personal as well as a business basis, not delving into their personal lives necessarily, but what is it that this person has as a goal? If you're the vice president of sales, do you know what your 5 regional managers, what they want to do in their next level position? Are they after your job? Because if they are, that's really good news. Because if you can equip them to take over for you, that means you're eligible for promotion to the next highest position in your organization or somewhere else for that matter. What about the day-to-day activities that say a customer service supervisor is involved in? There's a lot of stress in that work. If they can somehow create an environment where the employees feel that they are valued, guess what they'll do in transferring that to their clients? The research is a slam dunk. Loyal employees create loyal customers. You can't take an employee who's disgruntled and make them treat your customers in such a fashion as to create loyal customers. They can't do it because they're unhappy. Unhappy people do not communicate happy things to other folks. So that's a long-winded answer to a short question, but the idea is you build people up by encouraging and rewarding them, not necessarily with money, but with pats on the back and recognition for what they're doing right.
So to take some of these principles home is how can you as a business owner create this culture in your business where your sales team is inspired and encouraged and just out there selling for you. So think about that and maybe write on our blog some things that you're doing to incorporate some of these values. And we'll be right back with Mark in just a little bit.